With the latest points update, something that I've been saying for a long time finally happened. Khorne Berserkers went down in points, though not by much, only about 10 per 5-man squad, but that's given me the motivation I needed to paint up a bunch more to charge straight at my enemies. So today we're slapping red and brass onto the angriest canvas known to man, a World Eaters Berzerker. So let's make Khorne proud. The World Eaters are characterised by their iconic red and brass colour scheme, their use of chain axes and other brutal melee weapons like this massive eviscerator, and their relentless pursuit of warfare and bloodshed in the name of their god Khorne. They are also known for their famous battle cry, blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne, which encapsulates their desire for violence and offerings to their dark deity. In the tabletop of Warhammer 40k, the World Eaters are all about glorious close combat, and with their army rule, Blessings of Khorne, that can be given up to 2 extra buffs per battle round, and with their current detachment ability, Relentless Rage, where each time a World Eaters unit makes a charge, you add 1 to the strength and 1 to the attack characteristics. Makes a guy like this with his Khornite Eviscerator go to 4 attacks at strength 9, 2 AP and 2 damage. Combine that with For the Skull Throne stratagem and you would be wounding even some of the toughest armor in the game on a 4+. That and being able to give them, either lethal or sustained hits makes her a really proper killy dude. And just like the butcher's nails, let's dig in and paint up this Berserker. To start off, we're going to be using a black primer through an airbrush. I'm using Vallejo Black Surface Primer. If you don't have an airbrush, it's more than fine to use your favourite trusty rattle can of black primer. Give this guy a nice even spray and then wait for the primer to dry. Now to start on the main colour, and of course it wouldn't be a World Eater without starting with some Khorne Red. I'm using a Citadel Air version, though it's more than fine to do this process with a brush. I'm paying close attention to get a nice and even consistent coating and to make sure I get all the shadowy areas, as this will be my base red. Once that's all dry, I'm taking Mephiston Red and spraying all the raised areas and where all the light would catch, kind of like a more refined Zenithal highlight. Once again, if you don't have an airbrush, I would recommend just painting all the panels with Mephiston Red and leaving the Khorne Red in all the recesses to build up some nice contrast. Now that we have our main foundation colour down for the armour, it's time to put the airbrush away and start doing some good old fashioned brushwork. And the next part of the model is going to be the brass trim. And if this is a step you don't enjoy, then well, I don't think World Eaters or even Chaos Space Marines is an army for you, because I think around 80% of the painting of those models is working on the trim. Though there is an argument to be made that you can paint all the brass or gold first and then go in and paint all the armor panels second. I have had some success doing that with my Thousand Suns, so if that's what you prefer, go for it. But now let's bust out the Runelord brass and get some more paint on this Berserker. Taking our brass, carefully applying it to all the trim, being as neat and tidy as we can. When using metallic paints, it's best to use an older brush or even have a dedicated one just for metallics, as the particles from these paints can ruin a brush very quickly, as well as having a second pot of water to rinse these paints in. Once we have applied a few coats, we're going to take some Mephiston Red and just tidy up any of the errors that we made, though don't stress if you did make some, it's bound to happen along the way. Next, we're going to apply some Wraithbone to the 2 skulls on his power pack and also to the cloth of the handle of the Eviscerator. I got away with only using a couple of coats to get the solid colour I was looking for. Taking some pallid witch flesh, we'll be painting any of the skin that's showing, and for this guy it's on his right arm. I did thin this down a little bit more than normal and did about 3 coats. It can get a little chalky, so take your time, go slow, be patient, and wait for it to dry completely before each coat. Time to add some streaking grime. This here is an enamel effect paint that is going to serve multiple purposes. First off, it'll add definition to our recesses and also give a worn, lived-in feel to our mini. Be brave and brush all over the miniature, making sure to get in all the nooks and crannies, but do be aware of pooling. We don't want to completely flood the miniature. Well, we're kind of doing a controlled flood. Also, if this is your first time using enamel paints or oil paints, please don't wash your brushes in water, use a thinner such as white spirits. Once completely dry, takes about 30 minutes, or quicker if you use a hairdryer. Grab some Q-tips and some white spirits and soak the tip in the thinner. Drain off the excess liquid and start rolling the Q-tip over the model, reactivating and removing the paint. Now do be very careful as we didn't use a varnish over this model. If you use too much force, you can take off the underlying paint, and then we would be in a lot of trouble. I recommend rolling the Q-tip softly over the model. Don't rub or dab at it, just roll it back and forth, taking off all the extra grime that we don't want showing. Before going on to the next step, make sure 100% of all the thinner has dried off the model. Otherwise, your next layer of paint won't stick. I recommend giving it at least an hour or 5 to 10 minutes under the hairdryer. Using Vallejo black, I paint all the leather like his gloves and belt, and also his black carapace under his armor. Also, I go and paint all the parts that I'm going to be painting steel, black as well, as it will help with the coverage of the paint later on. Using Guilliman Flesh contrast paint, I paint all over the exposed arm, using the contrast paint to work in my favor and let it rest in all the recesses. Using some lead belcher for all the metallics such as the teeth and the motor on the eviscerator and the pipes by the helmet, the chains on the leg cloth and all the metal on the power pack. Once the lead belcher has dried, we're going to be going over it all with some Basilium Grey contrast paint to build up some real big shadows in all the recesses of the metallics. Using Vallejo white, or you could use just any other pure white, I take a really small brush and do horizontal lines across the eye lenses, being very accurate and taking my time. Once the lines are painted, I take some Warp Lightning contrast paint and go over the lenses, being really sure to get in the recesses as well as getting a real nice coverage over that white line, sort of what these really glowing out of the helmet. For the World Eater logo on the shoulder pad, we're going to be using the exact same method that they use on the box art. We're going to be taking some Lupercal green, thin down to a wash consistency, and get it all inside the teeth area. Then, when completely dry, use some Cabalite green, thin down just as much as before, and focus it right within the center of the World Eaters logo. If you need to glaze back and forth between those two colors, you're more than welcome to do so to get the desired effect. Back to our lead belcher, we're simply just going to dry brush over all the metallic steel we did to bring back some real nice shine to it. Using some thin down Dark Reaper, we simply go over all the black leather to give the brightest parts a blue tinge for some extra contrast to all the black. Now, no follower of Khorne is complete without some blood. My simple blood recipe is Liquitex Crimson and raw umber ink, using 1 part red to 3 parts brown. To get some real tasty blood spatters, I first use some foil and cover the parts of the model that I don't want any of the spatter on. And of course, I lay a towel down because things can get very, very messy. I take a flat-edged square brush and I simply flick the tip, aiming almost directly up from the brush. If you haven't done this before, do some practice flicks so you don't get blood everywhere. Though I suppose corn doesn't care from where the blood flows as long as it flows. Speaking of blood for the blood god, next we're going to be using that technical paint, and we're going to put it in the spots where the greatest amount of blood would be. And in this case, it's going to be around about the center of the eviscerator and any of the little bits that have gotten on the armor. This adds a real nice wet and glossy effect to the miniature. Now, no mini is complete without a base to stand on. All my World Eaters are using a 3D printed Sacred Temple base topper by Taxali Factory. If you're into 3D printing and love a quick and convenient base, then do go check them out at myminifactory.com. They're not a sponsor or anything, I just simply love their work. But that being said, now that we have this model painted and based, let's see the final result. And there we go, my take on bringing a Berserker to life. Remember, painting models is as much about the journey as it is about the final outcome. Each brushstroke, each choice of colour contributes to the unique tale that your figure stands to tell. Whether you're fielding an army or creating a display piece, the essence of the hobby is pretty much in your hands, shaped by pretty much your imagination and I guess your passion. If you would like to share any of your current paint jobs or work in progresses, please join us in our Discord, or drop a comment down below with your thoughts, experiences, or perhaps even your own tips and tricks that you've discovered along the way. If you have enjoyed this step-by-step guide, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It really means a lot. And also check out our live streams every Tuesday and Thursday. We stream live on Twitch and YouTube, so come by and say g'day. Lastly, to the community of painters, players, and lore masters, thank you for joining me today. Your enthusiasm and support fuels this channel, and our shared passion for the grimdark, that is Warhammer 40k. Until our next adventure across the warp, I'll see you War Masters next time.